Hello everyone and welcome back to Chess Programming with me, or Game Design actually, is probably the better name as I have mentioned before. So by the end of today's lesson, what we are going to want to have is pieces which we are going to be able to move around the board anywhere we like. For now, we are going to add the logic that we have been thinking about in pseudocode later on. So for now, we just want to allow pieces to move. How they move we will think about later on and use classes to do that. As you can see, I am currently able to move all of the pieces anywhere on the board. And well, although this again might seem quite easy, it's again slightly more difficult than it seemed at first, and you will see why. So today we are also going to be actually using the piece script and improving it. As you can see, this is what I have changed in it, but you don't exactly know what it does yet from just what is given here, because I had to change stuff in the game manager and the square. And so yeah, that's going to be the introduction, and now let's get started and go back to our project that we have that we did in the last lesson. So in the last lesson, what we did was just basically set up the board. We have no functionality yet. Before we actually do the movement, what I would also like to say is add functionality to the Start New Game button, because so far it doesn't actually do anything. There's quite an easy way to do this in Unity. Let me just find where it is. So in Game Manager, I have just added some notes for myself there. Ignore those. I want to add the handling for the game button over here, and how we do that, there's just a line of code that we need. So this is the line of code. Let me show you. I know it's kind of long, but it's the best one I've found. Also, you can use this, but it says that it's obsolete. It does work. I have tried it. It does work, but Unity apparently doesn't exactly like it, so the alternative I found was this. So use either or, use this one at your own warning, like you've been warned if you use it. I was also trying to use start, basically the initializer, but I don't think that that's a very good way of doing it, because it doesn't exactly restart everything the way we want it to, whereas this restarts the whole scene from the way it was beforehand. So that's the first thing I want to do today. Then the next thing is probably to start working with the script in the square, because that's kind of the most important thing. Although I will want to change a lot of the things, or move a lot of the things that are in the square scripts to the piece later on, so that's going to be in tomorrow's lesson. I know that this video is a day later, but I was testing out yesterday. I spent 6 hours just making everything work. So what I will want to do is move a lot of the stuff from square into the piece, so that the piece is independent of the square, allowing us to use the piece as its own class and make subclasses of piece later on. So we are going to do that in tomorrow's lesson, which is why, and because I didn't make a lesson yesterday, there's going to be a lesson today and tomorrow, which doesn't happen that too often. But for now, I think that that's going to be it. So we are going to start working on the square right now. Actually, what I did forget to do, so we're not going to start working right now, is to go to select the button and actually add the functionality. So as you can see, on click, we want to add something. Object, we want to select our well, what did we need to select again? We need to select our main canvas script. So let me find that really quickly. On the scene, or no, assets, and main canvas or game manager. No. Okay, so it is in the scene. Which means I will actually want to rename this so that I can easily find it, because this is the main canvas. I can just rename it to main canvas, and then find it in the scene. I believe it's somewhere near the bottom of all of the canvases. There we go, main canvas. When you select that, you can go into function, and you can go into game manager, which is the script that we've added to the canvas, and go game button handler. And now when we start playing the game, we should get no errors, which is good. And when we click this, it resets the scene. As you can see, the things over here also got minimized, which is a good indicator for now that everything is done. Once we actually are allowed to move the pieces, we will make sure that the start new game button actually starts a new game the way we want it to. So the way we are going to do this is I'm going to copy and paste things over, but as I'm doing it, I'm going to explain why I'm doing it, why I'm putting the stuff in that I am. So the first two things that I want to put in is, well, I want to add another library along with inheriting from another class as well. What these two things allow me to do, well, I will fix that later on. Don't worry, I know what's wrong. Along with this, allow me to basically count a mouse click on an object as and detect it so that I can select the object and then move it. So how I plan on making that work is when I'm in the game, as you saw me doing it at the start, I want to click a pawn, for example, which selects the pawn, and then I want to move it to here. I click on the square and then it moves the pawn to there. So these two things that I have just added to the script allow me to allow an object to detect a click on itself. So that's the easiest way of explaining it. So it just allows the object to detect the click from the user on itself. So there's an error here because we never actually use it. Now to use it, I've got kind of a complicated script. However, I am going to go through it. So this, I have put it here as my mouse interaction is my comment, and this is the full thing. There are errors here because I haven't actually defined what they are yet. However, that's what we're going to do in Game Manager and Piece later on. But for now, I can explain what they are. So this is the already pre-made function that is in the, or method that is in the iPointer down handler, which basically means when you click on the object. And how I'm detecting it here is, well, how I'm dealing with the click on my square. So what I can count as a square is this or anywhere around my piece, for example. So when I click on either of the two, so either around the piece or on a square, this is what happens. So first of all, what I do is get the canvas. So I'm just getting my canvas so that I can use the script that is in the canvas, i.e. the Game Manager script. I found that this is the easiest way to do it, and that's the way I'm doing it, as you can see, which is basically I can probably actually even do it this way. I think this should also work. Maybe not. Okay, so that's fine. What this does is finds a list of all of the elements on my scene which contain the Game Manager script, and then I call that the first one, and because there's only going to be one element in this list which contains the Game Manager, this script over here, which is in the canvas, I take that one and call it the canvas, and I take it from the canvases, which is over here. And so this only gives me the Game Manager script, or the Game Manager object, because we've already instantiated it on the scene. So that's what I get. Then ignore the comments, those are just extra things I was trying out there, because I had to do a few troubleshooting steps. Then if the canvas allows a square selection and canvas.allSquares int row int column .piece texture number is 0. So let's look at what all of these mean. Piece texture number, we know what that is. That is basically this. So if it's 0, if that's 0, that means that there's no piece on that square. Starting with that. And here I am selecting the squares, and I am selecting a specific square, which is the current square that I'm talking about. So I'm selecting the current square, in my all squares, which is just all squares from here. Let me find it. All squares. This should be public. If I change this to public, I am not going to have an error anymore in here. Or at least here I shouldn't have. There we go. Protection level is now gone, so I don't have an error. So I'm just getting the texture number of the square that I'm referring to with these. I could probably just do this here instead. That would probably be simpler. The this keyword is basically when you call something. So if I'm using this square, the green square that I'm hovering over, it has its own method, its own script. If I call that script using this square, then I can just use this to refer to it. And that is going to work. However, I am going to keep both of these things, well, I'm going to keep this as a comment and put this there, keep that there. Just in case I want to change something later on or it doesn't work. The canvas.allow square selection. So this is a new thing that I will add in the game manager later on, which basically tells me whether I have selected a piece. If I have selected a piece, then I am allowed to select a square to move the piece to. However, if I have not selected a piece yet, well, I have nothing to move. So allow square selection will be false, and I'm not going to be allowed to get into here. The and is just an AND gate here. That's all it means. So when this and this are true, allow this. Otherwise, it's not going to allow it. This is how you type AND in C#. I know that in Python it would just simply be AND, but in C# and C++ this is how you do it. So when you are allowed to select a square, i.e. once you have selected a piece, and the texture number on the piece is not empty, so you are actually selecting a piece, or no, you are actually selecting a square, allow movement of the piece to that square. We are going to want to change this later on so that you can take the opponent's piece, but for now I want to keep it as this, keep it simple, so that when I hover and click on this piece, I am also allowed to go on this piece and click on it without this piece taking this piece. And allows for reselection of a piece if you don't select the correct piece the first time around. So this will be changed later on. However, for now I did just want to keep it. Without this, as I said, you could take any piece with any other piece. So I could even take my own white pieces with my white pieces. So the canvas, then, if both of those are true, what I do is I go to the game object, to the game manager script, and the canvas current selection, square selection. So what my current square selection is basically it gives me back a list that contains two elements, both of which are integers, and gives me the coordinates of the squares. So for example, I have this square. Its row number, or int row, would be 7. Its column number, or int col, would be 2. And here I'm just assigning new ones to the current square selection. Or actually what I'm doing is telling that telling the canvas that my current square selection is from the current instance of the square that I have selected. So it's basically, the easiest way to explain these two lines are, give me the coordinates of this current square and give them to game manager. That's the easiest way to explain it. So this only happens when I click on a square. When I click on a square, game manager gets its coordinates. Easiest way to explain it, I believe. Then the canvas check selection. Now the canvas check selection, let me find that over here, and I will have to explain what that does after I put it into the game manager. So have it in mind, because that's also a longer-ish script. But basically what it does is it checks whether I have selected a piece and changes different variables depending on how my selection is. So this, one of the things also that this does is, if I haven't selected a piece, but I click on a square here, then it selects this piece instead of selecting the square. So that it's much easier to select the piece that is on the square. Okay, so we will cover this in a second once we get to the editing the game manager. But for now, that's how I'm going to go into detail for. So that's if this is true. However, if that isn't true, as I kind of already mentioned earlier, then if it's not 0, i.e. if there is a piece on the square, then piece canvas piece equals get component in child, and then select that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm getting the piece that is on the square which I have clicked on, so that instead of selecting the square, it makes it easier to select the piece. And that's all that this does. I think that I'm going to leave it there, because we also need to talk about canvas piece and select piece, in which we are going to add to our piece there. Okay, so now that we have done that, let's talk about start and update. Or rather, just start, actually. I should have said that. So in here, what we're going to have is set piece coordinates. We haven't defined this method yet, but what it is going to do is get the child of square, i.e. the piece that is in the square, and give it the value of the coordinates which the square has, so that the piece itself knows where it is on the board. So that's what this is going to do. We are going to define it in here. Then we have, let me see what this is going to be. It's above set empty, we have set visible. We need to actually move these into piece, or no, we need to change them from private to public, so that it makes it easier to access these from the game manager, and we can make things visible later on. So that's what that was going on there. We want those to be public. We don't need to actually edit them for now. Over here, beneath set empty, we are going to have a set piece coordinates. So this is just this function, or this method. There we go, we are going to define it. So what it does is it gets the, well, using the piece from that's in the square, which we are going to define how to get now. It sets its end row and its end column to be equal to the end row and end column of our square. So that's that. Inside of our void awake, now we want to also get the piece that is inside of our square. So this is how we are going to do that. Piece in square, that's giving me an error because I also need to predefine it, which I am going to do in just a second once I find where I have actually done it. So I make it public, and I just put it over here. There we go. So we get the public piece in square, and this is just going to hold the piece that is on the square. So if this was the square in question, then the piece that this square holds is going to be this piece, and it just gets it, and we have it there to work with. In row, we are going to define those in here because we haven't worked on piece yet, and I think that that's about it for our square method. So there are quite a few errors, as you can see, but as I mentioned, we are going to work on those. So in piece, let's move on to piece right now. I don't think I need to do anything there. Because this is simple, I can just copy and paste the whole thing. What I do is add an extra library, the same library which I just added into square, so that it allows me to select the piece once again. So these were here beforehand. What have I added? I have added this. So select piece, I call the select piece method, which I have already defined here. You could put it in here directly, however I did this because I want to use it later on as well in my game manager, as you will see in just a moment. So what this does is, similarly to how our square works, it just gives the game manager the piece that we have selected. So first of all, we get the game manager the exact same way that we did in the square, and then the canvas.current piece selection equals piece number, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, and then the canvas.check selection. So I just call the check selection, which tells it that I have selected a piece, and now I am allowed, or should be allowed, to select a square as well. So what piece number is, well, as you can see, I've actually defined it as, I thought I had defined it as a public variable. Let me just take a quick look of my pieces. So where we are going to put our piece, what's it called, script, is on the canvas. So we're going to put it there. And this is kind of not going the way I wanted to, or maybe I'm just not thinking that I've done it the same way I did here. That is kind of weird. I thought this should be public int row, public column, and let me just check something real quick. So in the end, what I actually decided was to split this video up in 2 parts because it became actually quite long in the end. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. The next video will come out tomorrow, as today is Thursday and this is already a day late. So there will be 2 days of consecutive videos. I didn't release a video yesterday because, as I mentioned, I was working on this for 6 hours and I didn't exactly have the time to put the video out. I was trying to figure out how to select pieces because I went through 2 different ways to select a piece. They didn't work, and then I found a 3rd way which did work. And it's going to be outlined in today's video or tomorrow's, I'm not exactly sure. So thank you for watching so far. Once again, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. But until tomorrow, once again, thanks for watching and goodbye.